People who found out about someone else's double life. What's the story? Retired lawyer here. I once represented a widow who was seeking survivor's benefits from her husband's military pension. Turns out that the old goat was a trigamist who somehow managed to juggle 3 families without any of them learning about the other 2. Although there were enough unexplained absences and such that none of the 3 were terribly surprised. Next story. Around year 8 of my marriage, I met my then-husband's girlfriend of 9 months. He told me he was working doubles on his night off, night shift worker, but he was bunking at her place those nights and crawling out of her bed at 5 a.m. to come home from work. I was packing him lunches for his effing sleepovers with her. Once she and I knew about each other, we swapped photos and stories. Her apartment was full of photos of them together. She even had him on her insurance plan. She had zero clue he was married, thought they were endgame, the whole thing. Once I filed for divorce, I let her know he was all hers, and apparently they stayed together for about 2 months. Then he cheated on her with the next one. Yeah, so when a secret is exposed dually like this, I'd never understand why, one of the people in the other side of the relationship decides to stay with that person anyway. You already know that this person's literally a cheater, literally a slime bag. Why are you continuing to stay with them? Next story. My office hired a new admin/receptionist. He seemed nice and normal in the interview, but then stopped showing up to work, always leaving voicemails with more and more elaborate and dramatic excuses about why he was out. Like he was in a car accident and in the hospital fighting for his life. Pray for me. Turns out he had accepted multiple other jobs and wasn't showing up to any of them either, but he was getting paid by all of them. Next story. We had neighbors who lived directly next door that we became great friends with. We had children together and almost an open door policy of wandering into each other's homes. They were both really great people. His parents were great people who lived nearby. He seemed to be a good person raised by good people. Their daughter was 2 and our son was 3. We had fun together and pretty honest conversations about life, or so we thought. Then, one night, the 4 of us are sitting on their back porch like we always do. Around midnight, the husband tells us that they have some news to tell us. Wife looked clueless. He proceeds to say, "We're getting a divorce and in a month I'm moving 5 states away. I've accepted a promotion and I'm moving." My entire body went numb. What? Is this for real? The wife stayed calm the entire time and just went along with it, but we later found out that he had never told her they were getting divorced and that most of this was news to her and he just dropped it on her in front of us. What a nightmare. After this, she basically let us know how different he is behind closed doors. She showed us all these complicated spreadsheets he would put together for her to do house chores. She's a lawyer. She worked a job, just like his corporate ass. It was really upsetting for my husband and I because this was a couple that we identified with and we were raising our kids together and we found out that the husband was just a psychopath pretending to like all of us. Ultimately, they both moved. The husband and the wife are both remarried, and the wife is doing fantastic and married someone she knew from high school, and they have a pretty fabulous life. And the dad of the now teenager is basically a deadbeat, but sends the money. Next story. My cat. He was a neighborhood stray that started following us home during walks with our dog. Soon he started letting himself into the house when we'd come in from our walks, then spending the night. Then he started hanging out during the day and eating there, but still leaving whenever he pleased. Sometimes he'd leave for a day or 2, but it still felt like he was here most of the time. One day, he shows up injured. We took him to the shelter in case he was chipped. When we first met him, he had a flea collar on him. If he wasn't, we planned to formally adopt him. During the in-between weeks when the shelter healed him up and held him in case his original humans claimed him, the neighbors from across the street reached out to us. Their daughter was sad because they hadn't seen him in a long time. It turns out he was two-timing us. He was also letting himself into their house, eating there and sleeping there. They also never fully took him in because they also thought he belonged to someone else. No one claimed him, so a few weeks later we formally adopted him. We now have joint custody with the neighbors, and he's a 2-household cat with supervised outdoor time so that he doesn't show up with more surprises. He has double the humans and double the dogs to bully. Can't imagine how a double life could have turned out better. I don't think I've ever heard of a joint custody of a pet before. That's actually pretty cool. This cat is definitely living his best life. Next story. Found out that a successful man at my kid's private school actually had another family at the same school. Original wife apparently never knew. Kids found out when their mom accidentally died in her garage. He married the other woman a few weeks later. Next story. My aunt did 23andMe, and that's how we all found out about the second family my late grandpa had, and abandoned in the 1960s. Turns out I have 2 extra uncles. My mom's family moved to the other side of the USA in the late 1960s. My mom now believes that they moved because my grandma found out about my grandpa's mistress. My grandpa always doted on me and his other grandchildren from the kids he had in wedlock. It's been hard to wrap my head around the fact that he straight up abandoned 2 of his kids and might even have grandchildren that he never met. Next story. In college, I'd been dating a dude for several years. He had a sister who was an overnight nurse with a live-in boyfriend. Live-in boyfriend managed a large grocery store. I met up with a friend for lunch one day whose mom and her happened to work at the same grocery store in management. I said, "Oh, she must know John, my man's sister's live-in boyfriend." She said, "No, there's only one John and he's dating another manager at the store. They've been dating for several years." Well, turns out it was the same John. He was able to get away with it because of the overnight nurse aspect. Never invited her to company outings or holiday parties. Wouldn't be her friend on Facebook. Hindsight, but pretty crazy to be the one to navigate breaking that secret wide open. Next story. Found out that someone within a friend group completely faked being a student at a relatively prestigious university in the area. Nobody had a clue. He basically came and hung out with people and pretended he attended classes. But actually he dropped out years ago and just pretended to be a student. He even pretended that he graduated and was at the graduation ceremony. Next story. My friend was married to a man who traveled a lot for work for several years of their marriage. One day, she was watching the news that had a live broadcast of a wounded soldier returning to his fiancée of several years. It was my friend's husband. He wasn't in the military or wounded. Boy, was he surprised that his future in-laws called the news station. He's in prison now. I don't know the details, but it had to do with defrauding the government. Next story. Only very recently, but my grandmother. Currently, we're cleaning out my grandma and grandpa's house as she passed away a few years ago, and he's now living in a home. While emptying out cupboards in their bedroom, my aunt and mother found a Ziploc bag of $6,000 in a handbag, and then $8,000 in a suitcase. There were also very detailed notebooks of people's names, money logs, and weights. We have no idea where the money came from, or why those details have been recorded. We can't ask my pops, because unfortunately he barely remembers my mom some days, so it'll be a mystery in our family. Next story. A work friend of mine just casually mentioned to a few of us on a lunch break about how he travels to South America every few months just to keep his wife there happy. He has a wife here who he's brought to company events. I was mind blown, and it was an extremely awkward moment after that. Next story. Had an uncle. He was charming and clever. Thankfully, he never touched me, but my cousins did not find out until I got out of college. When he was finally caught, he was sent to prison in Alaska. All 3 of my cousins just slipped into such darkness that they fell into a meth crowd. Sometimes I wish I could see behind facades. Never knew who I was actually playing Chutes and Ladders with. Next story. I've told this story on here before, but I met a guy on Tumblr, back when it didn't suck, who was working in the area as a contractor for the army. We had a couple week-long fling. Good company, great sex. When he was headed back to upstate New York, I said thanks and wished him well. He insisted this wasn't a fling, we could make it work. I was hesitant, but said we'd try. Long story short, after he was gone, I got a feeling he was married and started digging, but couldn't find evidence of his existence at all. Red flag. Then, one day, a friend wanted me to reinstall Snapchat. When I did, I imported my phone contacts, including his. His username was a little different. I Googled, and up he came on what was then RateMyEx.com, which revealed his real name and the motherload of info, including a military.com article. Not only was he still married, but that was his second wife, who he'd married while still married to wife 1. He dropped wife 1 and their 4 kids off his military benefits, too. Doctored divorce papers to marry wife number 2, and they now have 3 kids. Wife number 1 had to sue him through military court over the benefits and to get a real divorce. That's the military article I found. I messaged him to congratulate him on actually surprising me. I'd expected him to be married, but bigamy was a fun twist. No response. Shocker. I then posted about him on Tumblr as a warning. I was part of the kink community, which is smaller than it might seem. The effer liked the post. Several other women messaged me that they'd either been involved with him or at least messaged with him. I'm still friendly with one of them. Next story. On 2 different occasions now, I've dated women who told me after quite a while that they were cheating on someone else with me. I'm not sure what's made me attractive to people in relationships, but it's kind of troubling. Next story. When I lived in San Francisco's Tenderloin district about 20 years ago, a well-loved actor would come through in the dead of night to buy rocks. Sometimes the dealers would make him do bits before they sold to him. It was really sad, but there was also a wall next to a 7-Eleven a lot of street kids hung out at. He would always buy them food and talk to them and was very kind. You would not have thought that looking at this actor, in fact, in interviews, he said he'd been clean since the 80s. I always wondered what type of pain he had that would continuously haunt backstreets like that late at night and hang with street kids rather than sleep or be with his family. But very, very kind man. Great listener. Next story. My dad had a mistress for a decade or so and a secret child. After he'd been dead about 15 years, my teenage sibling reached out to my full sibling and me to let us know we had a half-sibling and see if we wanted to get to know each other a little bit. To say this threw me for a loop is an understatement. My dad was an abusive a-hole and an alcoholic, but after he'd been dead for so long, I figured I knew most of the stuff about him. It was like I time-traveled back to my high school years, and I remembered all these things I hadn't thought of in decades, like when I called him and he was drunk and there was a drunk woman talking loudly over him. I knew he was a cheater, but I didn't think he had anything long-term or serious, and obviously I didn't know about any half-siblings. And I literally found him out on my 6-month sober anniversary. But I stayed sober. He messed us all up good and left a trail of destruction in his wake, but overall, we're doing pretty well now. Next story. There was always this mystery about my grandfather suddenly leaving medical school and coming back to his tiny rural town in Wisconsin. This was in the early 1900s. Even as a child, I was keenly aware of my grandfather's sense of loss from that, but no one ever knew why he left med school, came home, married my grandmother, and built a life. Long after he passed, my father found out. He had a half-brother in the state he'd gone to school at. My grandfather got a girl pregnant and ran off in the early 1900s. Next story. Back as a teen, I spent a couple of weeks at my aunt's and uncle's place. They moved their son to the basement and had me in his upstairs bedroom, next to the 2 girls. I got bored and got digging around. Nosy, I know, and found a stash of panties, a bra, and a 2-piece bathing suit. I confronted him. He cried and admitted he stole them to wear them. He didn't know why. I asked if he knew who they belonged to. They were random grabs from bags, and he didn't know. I told him it was damn creepy. He had to stop stealing. I told him if he agreed to stop, I'd buy him something. I had a credit card by that point. Dad checked the statement monthly, so he knew what I spent. I used some of my clothing budget to buy my cousin a couple of panties and a lingerie bra. He was really happy. I did not ask to see him in them. I have no idea what happened after that. My cousin hasn't come out as gay, trans, or a crossdresser. He seems to be a fairly normal guy. Next story. My aunt's husband was a traveling jewelry salesman. He had a second family in a faraway state. He had 7-year-old twin daughters when my aunt found out. My other aunt was married to a co-owner of a strip club. He was definitely a part of the mob. My dad is significantly younger than his siblings and remembers bullet holes in his car and helping him count cash. Then, one day, he kicked my aunt and his 2-year-old daughter out for no apparent reason, I assume for their safety. He came to my cousin's wedding and told everyone there a different place for where he was currently supposedly living. Next story. Cousin of mine started dating a guy who seemed nice enough but was hesitant since she had bad luck with some past partners. Some other family members knew him when he was younger and said he was a nice guy, so she gave him a fair shot and they got serious. He had some past issues like bad credit, arrested a long time ago for what she thought wasn't a big crime but never looked into it, and a divorce with split custody of a kid, but ultimately nothing too concerning. Overall, though, he was nice to her, good job in the trades, etc. One day, Cousin's at a party at the guy's house, and out of nowhere, SWAT rolls in with guns drawn and tells everyone to get down. They raid the house and ultimately found that he was in possession of weapons, with serial numbers scratched off, when he's a convicted felon with an armed robbery charge. He sat in jail for a while and needed my cousin to do a few things at the house and get some documents for his lawyer. She asked my mom to help her. They sign into his phone, and what do you know? He was cheating on my cousin with his ex-wife and another woman. He was also sending them money and talking crap about my cousin to them. Needless to say, he just got out of jail and she broke up with him, lol. Probably should have done a more thorough check on him, but it's hard when they seem nice enough and try to be overly honest about their past. Next story. My mom's boyfriend lived with my family for probably 6 years or so. In that time, he worked and went to school at night and got an MBA, and quickly got better and better jobs. Later on, after they broke up and he moved out, I found out he was selling drugs out of our house, did meth on occasion, if not more, and was not the person I thought he was at all. He went on multi-day benders, and once I had to track him down just to figure out where he was for his own mom. Turns out he was on a bend and crashing at this meth head's place who he was selling to, and he had hookers coming in and out nightly while he was out there. He was selling everything from weed to crack and going to these crazy parties that I had no idea about when I thought he was just a normal guy trying to make a better life for himself. Next story. I saw my high school English teacher out for dinner with my high school Spanish teacher. They were both married to other people. The next year, they had both gotten divorced and then married each other, so they had the same last name. Oh, you have Wilson for English? Who's your Spanish teacher? Mrs. Wilson? Cool. I found out later that their respective spouses had also gotten together, but not married at that point, and the four of them went on group dinners. Alright, so the first part of this story, a little sketchy, but ultimately nothing wrong with it in the grand scheme of things. The second part, definitely weird. How did we not only do a partner swap, but you guys were going on group dates together? What is this world that we're living in? Next story. Back in the early 90s, I was about 6, and a nice family with 2 little girls moved into the neighborhood. I was thrilled to have a playmate close to home, and even more thrilled when the youngest girl joined my grade. Naturally, our parents spent time with their parents and hung out during our playdates. The family appeared wealthy and was a bit over-generous, offering gifts and inviting us along to expensive outings. Around this time, a series of violent bank robberies hit my tiny, peaceful country. They were an organized gang, and the violence was shocking and unprovoked. I seem to remember they shot security guards before even making demands. My family was terrified when the gang hit our small local bank. It made no sense. A friend of the family had been about to exit her parked car at the bank when she heard gunshots and was forced to cower in fear, ducking into the car's footwell as best she could. This sort of thing was unheard of in our town. All the adults were scared. It wasn't long before my 2 playmates and their parents disappeared, and not long before their dad's face was on the newspaper. The bank robbing gang had been tracked down by a toll booth receipt left behind in a rental car. It was my friend's dad and his friend, and the mother was well aware. They'd fled their own country for similar crimes, apparently. My mom always said that my dad got a weird vibe from them. They were vague about their past, their jobs, and a bit too invested in keeping up appearances. I always wondered what happened to the 2 little girls. I remember we used to play princess dress-up, and one day they lent me a pair of gold ballerina flats I absolutely adored. Their mother laughed and said I could keep them. My mom frowned when I came home with them and wanted to wear them everywhere. She said gold shoes were tacky. As an adult, I have a special fondness for gold shoes, and have bought a pair or 2 over the years. Next story. I was talking to my dad, and he set his phone down face up and unlocked. And I saw some text messages sent between him and his mistress, as well as a picture of a woman, I'm assuming the mistress, going down on a man, I'm assuming my dad, shot from the man's perspective. It wasn't the first time we caught him cheating. Next story. Years ago, I worked for a major retail store. Girl got hired and was in her first month. Still going through new hire training. She was really nice. Then word got around that she was in some adult content. That crap spread like wildfire throughout the staff, everyone sending links to her vids. She ended up quitting. This was around 2009, and I still feel bad for her. Next story. My aunt was a stewardess in the 80s. She married a foreign businessman she met while working international flights. He seemed like a nice guy. They were married for like 12 years. I was traveling through Europe and was going to be in the city where he had an apartment, so I had planned to stay with him. Everything was fine, except he wasn't around much. He made some excuse about having to work a bunch. In the 10 days I spent there, he never slept at the apartment, and I only saw him for a couple hours every day. I was 17, and I guess my parents were under the impression my uncle was going to chaperone me. After I told them about my trip, my mom gave my aunt a ration of crap for letting me roam the streets for 10 days. My aunt went and had a fight with my uncle over it, and it came out that he didn't really live at the apartment. That was his mistress' shackup spot. He had a wife and children. My aunt was the mistress. Next story. Former contacted a customer of mine. He was C-suite. A quiet guy, kept to himself, and really didn't open up to people at all, but we got along really well, and he would talk to me about personal stuff. He lived with his girlfriend of a few years. I met her when we went out to lunch one day when she was off work and joined us. I knew he typically flew down to Texas a couple long weekends a month. Go in to visit him one day about an upcoming project we were working on, and he had just gotten back from vacation. He excitedly proceeded to show me pics from his trip to Mexico, with his wife and kids who live in his other house in Texas. Next story. My mom found out she had an older half-brother she didn't know about for 60-plus years. For context, her dad, my grandfather, was a professional musician, got a woman pregnant when he was serving in World War II. He was also married to my grandmother at the time. In the mid-2000s, a family friend read a magazine article featuring a pro guitarist who said he found out, at the age of 19, that his bio father was my grandfather. The family friend shared the article with my mom. The siblings met eventually and were part of each other's lives until he passed away. He even added her to his will. The really unfortunate thing is my grandmother learned her husband was indeed unfaithful, but he'd abandoned her with 3 teenagers in the 1960s. It wasn't shocking. Still, it stung. P.S. Still to this day, my mom doesn't want to do Ancestry.com. She doesn't have the capacity to deal with any more half-siblings. Next story. My father always acted like the perfect saint. He always stood in judgment of us all. That was wrong. I learned that my father planned to run off with his mistress and had proposed to her while still married to my mother. He planned to get control of all the accounts, throw our family out of the house with nothing, and then move his mistress and her friends into the house. The mistress would have gotten everything, and we would have been on the street. He got caught because I noticed it was odd that a married man would work till 9 o'clock on a Friday while his wife was out of town. I told my mother this, and she started digging, and she found so much. When confronted about all this, he claimed the first mistress was only a fantasy, and he would never have thrown us out. My mother discovered that he had changed his life insurance policy to go to the mistress. He had also planned to get the car and the house titles for her. My mother kept working on this and found so much. Come to find out, he had been a cheating dirtbag long before this mistress. By my count, he had around 12 affairs with different women over the 40 years he's been married to my mother. And those are just the ones I knew about. We knew about none of this. He claimed it was an accident that he had been with these women. The best part was that one of the affairs was with my mother's sister. He had planned to run off with her, and my father had kept a love note my aunt had sent him. So that one was confirmed. This one is just a theory of mine, but I'm almost certain my cousin, the cheating aunt's kid, is actually my half-brother. He's completely different from the other cousins and looks virtually identical to my brother. That's something I also need to worry about. TLDR, my saint of a father was really a cheating dirtbag who planned to throw me out of my house, and my cousin is almost certainly my half-brother. Next story. My former stepfather cheated on his ex-wife to be with my mom at a time when my mom left my entire extended family behind. The ex-wife successfully sued my mom for every penny she had, essentially damning my family into paycheck-to-paycheck financial instability for multiple years. My former stepfather hid all sorts of relationships over the 13 years he was married to my mom. About 3 years into the marriage, my mom found out that he had another former wife and child before his ex-wife. The worst was how we found out towards the end of the marriage to my mom that he proceeded to balance up to 6 other girlfriends at a time for the entire 13-year marriage while spending every dime from every paycheck on stupid crap like an iPhone upgrade for himself, further worsening our financial situation. He once used my college photo on Tinder to try and catfish more women. He would blame all of his decades of bad behavior on his sex addiction and bipolar disorder. He voted for George W. Bush twice in support of the sanctity of marriage. He was so ashamed of himself that he moved to the farthest possible U.S. state from where we live. Good riddance. Next story. My grandmother had a secret husband. She was a public health doctor going from town to town doing vaccinations at schools, shutting down restaurants for health violations, testing tap water, among other things. She was a busy, important person with a loving husband, Bert, who was an anesthesiologist and had 3 grown sons, and they lived in the city. Her husband, Jim, was previously widowed and lived a few towns over and was a car salesman. Jim had 3 teenage sons. My grandfather, Bert, bought a car off Jim, and they started talking about their wife, and you can guess what happened. After the epic court battles, my grandmother moved penniless to Juneau. My grandpa and Jim became close and spent Christmases together with their boys for decades. Next story. I don't know if it's really a double life. Maybe. So my uncle, through marriage, way back, was part of the Winter Hill Gang, one of Whitey Bulger's thugs. He was married, had kids, and they did not know his job. And he beat the crap out of people, mentioned hanging someone into a furnace, had a stab wound in his back. I have no idea how much crap he actually did. So one day, he decides he doesn't want to kill anymore, leaves his family and takes off, divorces the wife. He meets my dad's sister somewhere. I don't know. They get married. They have kids. The thing is, I live in the same neighborhood as his first family. We know them. They're cool people. So his first kids hate him, right? Effing hate him. I don't like him either. He's an a-hole. And he's a effing pastor. He became a pastor. The crap. The absolute crap. You know, some of the most despicable people that I've ever met in my life have been pastors or former pastors. So yeah, that doesn't absolve him of anything. Good story. Next story. I'm from a pretty rural area. When I was a teen, we had a guy in our friend group who was house sitting for his uncle. He told us we were all allowed to stay over for the weekend during summer. Uncle was super chill and let us use the kitchen, cars, grill, swimming pool, everything. Yeah, it turned out Uncle didn't even know nephew was staying over while he was away. 2 friends of mine were charged for joyriding, but charges were dropped when it became clear that they really had no clue. Next story. In college, I was visiting my then-girlfriend over the summer, and her dad, who was a truck driver, came home with a young boy who called him Dad. He insisted he was babysitting a friend's kid, but my girlfriend's mom knew what was up. Called him out on his BS, and it all unraveled while I was there. He wasn't a good or bad husband. They divorced, and less than a year later, he passed away from a heart attack. Both families attended the funeral. Next story. Ran into my regional manager at a party. No big deal, right? Well, he was in full drag, drunk, and leading a gimp around by the collar. I didn't recognize him at first, but when I heard his voice, I snapped my head around and called out his name. He spun around and locked eyes with me. He walked over in his best supermodel walk and said, "What do you want, female dog?" The realization dawned on him before he could spiral out, and I assured him I wasn't going to say anything, and then the gimp talked. "Thanks, man." Took me a second, but I recognized the voice. It was my supervisor. I knew he was gay, but the whole gimp suit was a shock. I assured them again I wouldn't say a word. Had a pretty good time with the drag queen and gimp for the next few hours. Next story. My friend's mom died. She was a hoarder. I helped them deal with the house, and that was a world unto itself. Her husband's business was largely in Asia, and there was nowhere for him in the home anyway. So he was rarely there, and when he came, he stayed with a relative. Same with my friend, who also didn't live there full-time because they were in grad school in another state. I had a really hard time believing the dad would just let the wife he loved live like that, and asked my friend, "Are you super duper for sure certain your dad doesn't have a secret family in Asia?" And they were like, "No, dude, my dad loves my mom too much to do that." He did, though. A woman and wife that had 2 sons. He eventually came out of the closet, as it were, and tried to have them live in the United States. It was a failed experiment, and they all went back to Asia, and my friend is an orphan, basically. Next story. You could call it a double life. At work, I'm this hardcore workaholic, solving everyone's problems, managing teams, fixing every screw-up, working like a horse. But on weekends and evenings, oh man, I turn into a completely useless, indecisive blob who can't even figure out what to eat for dinner or what to watch. Honestly, I think my coworkers should never see my weekend version of myself. Yeah, I think OP here is speaking on behalf of a lot of people. Bust your butt from Monday to Friday and then just absolutely disappear on the weekends. Love it. Next story. Not me, but my parents. They rented their old condo to a woman, and it turned out she had stolen her ex-wife's identity and was literally pretending to be her on a day-to-day basis. She had been romancing various women, moving in with them and stealing a bunch of their crap, including their identity, before disappearing again. She had done this in multiple states and even had a warrant out for her arrest. She had 2 teenage daughters who she had trained on how to help hide their mom's real identity if people came asking about her. My dad figured out she was working at a dentist's office and also stealing the identities of various patients, which led to my dad tipping off her employer, and she got arrested while she was at work. The dentist who owned the practice was even nice enough to record her getting arrested and sent the video to my dad as a thank you for tipping him off about her scheme. Next story. Parents were friends with a younger couple. They never got out to do much because the husband worked in nautical repairs and engineering for the Coast Guard. They had one car, lived out in the middle of nowhere, and the wife was stranded because he took the car up and down the coast repairing vehicles. The flip, the dude actually made incredible money. It was just spread thin between his two families. He has a second family, kids. It was wild. I was 14 when this happened, and I didn't know this was something humans could do. Next story. My friend had a neighbor who's a predator and had child adult content on his computer. Caught him taking a picture of my goddaughter. I called the police and they arrested him. My friend has security cameras and they clearly showed him pointing a camera at my goddaughter. Dude was on parole and got sent back to prison for 20 years before some smartass comes in here and says something like, actually the max for child adult content is only like 15 years and can get out on good behavior after 12. The reasons it was 20 was because he violated his parole multiple times. First off, my friend and her family live across the street from an elementary school, and I don't mean like, oh, you can walk to the school. I mean the back of their house is facing the school, and he was their next door neighbor. Second thing he did was falsify documents about his home and neighborhood. He submitted a document that shows he was staying with family nowhere near a school. Also, the family that claimed he was staying with them also got charged with lying to police and falsifying documents, since when you stay with family while on parole, the family also has to sign a document that they're in agreement with that individual staying with you. Third thing he did, or rather not do, was he missed 4 mandatory appointments with his parole officer. Last thing he did was attempt to purchase a firearm while on parole. Next story. Great-grandpa had 3 kids, grandma being one of them. On the other side of the city, he had a girlfriend and fathered one more. What made it worse, she would press and iron all of his clothes to go down the club and shoot pool, when in reality, he was with his other family. Finally, my great-grandmother divorced him in the 1950s, and she raised 3 girls as a single mom on a waitress salary. 70 years later, my mom is Ancestry.com and finds out he had a son my grandmother's age that he never met. My mom matched as a potential cousin. After connecting some dots, it was confirmed. Guy was not a great man. Next story. I used to be a bellman at a luxury hotel in San Francisco. There was a high-powered businessman who would stay with us 6 or 7 times a year on business trips. He would frequently talk about his wife back home and his adult children. About the 3rd time I met him, he asked me to bring up his other suitcase, which was stored in the bell closet and, according to my coworkers, had been for at least a decade. About an hour later, he came down to the lobby in full leather, boots, pants, and bare-chested with a harness. He met a group of similarly dressed 20-something men out front and disappeared into the night. Next story. Found out the reason for my coworker's first divorce was because he embezzled and defrauded his company for millions. I knew him when he was married to his second wife, his high school sweetheart. She apparently never got over him and took him in when he was out of the clink. As a felon, he was unemployable. He worked in the legal field so truly that option was truly dead. His second wife supported him and bankrolled several self-employment ideas, one of which was actually quite successful. The rest were glorified hobbies, and basically, as long as he broke even, she didn't even care. Couldn't have had a cushier situation. Several years after we stopped working together, I noticed he went from being a daily Facebook poster to going completely silent. I asked another former coworker who told me he and his second wife had split. He apparently had a whole-ass second family in another country. He's married to her. She looks about half his age, and they have multiple kids together. Next story. One of my best for like 2 decades, starting in 5th grade. Always had an absent father. Like, her parents were married, a beautiful house, the whole shebang. But I think I met him only after a few years because he was always off working somewhere else. A somewhat successful OBGYN who also did surgeries. We were so close, they even took me on week-long vacations during summer holidays, which was also basically the only time I saw him. He wasn't even around for all birthdays, Christmas, etc. One day we were having brunch and my friend told us he had finally opened his own practice with someone he knew since they went to university. We Googled their practice, super fancy for early 2010s, homepage, some newspaper articles about the opening, one of which introducing her father and his coworker as married couple who moved to XY with their 5 children. My friend broke down. Long story short, it's all true. Her mother knew. It had been ongoing for like 20 years at that point. The deal was she got the house, the name, and the benefits and the holidays. The other woman got him 90% of the time. He even got them the same wedding bands. That was like 8 years ago. It's all crumbling apart now. He's seriously sick, has officially divorced my friend's mom and married the other wife for tax purposes. Reasonable. A while ago. Now my friend's mom is in serious financial trouble, has not been seen in months. It's heartbreaking. Like, she has the house and a small pension, but that's it. She would have to sell her home of nearly 40 years to make ends meet, but she doesn't, so my friend has gone into debt to support her financially. Just a sad mess. Next story. This actually happened to me 2 months ago. I was in a situationship with a man I met at work for 2 years. 2. I was head over heels for him. Dates, gifts, we spent the holidays together, talked every day. He had a lot of trust issues because he was cheated on multiple times in the past. Always suspicious I was messing with other people. Could never make up his mind on if he wanted something more with me. One day, we went to the movies together. As we were walking out of the theater, this group of girls walk up to us. It's his girlfriend of 1 year and her friends. She had a feeling something was wrong that night, went by the theater and saw his car and waited for him to come out. I had no idea the whole time. I've never felt so hurt and shocked by someone before. It's like this person I knew for 2 years never existed. Best part? His girlfriend forgave him. So now they're in a one-sided open relationship. He gets to F other women, she gets to F no one. Imagine hiding your double life for over a year and then just get permission to keep effing doing it. Insane. I agree. Insane. How is it a one-sided open relationship? Who is okay with this? Who is that desperate to date this one person that's obviously not a good person? Next story. I am adopted. When I first found my biological mother's side, I did a bit of digging. I found out that my biological grandfather was stationed in Los Angeles during the Korean War. He got married to a Jewish girl. His family was Catholic. 2 years later, he's back home and got married to bio grandma. I have a gut feeling that he just left California and never divorced the first wife. When he filled out the marriage license with bio grandma, he gave his age as 1 year older. The first wife left California and moved to a different state and also got married again 2 years later. Next story. My ex-wife lived a double life for months. The job she said she had only lasted a few weeks, but for over 4 months, she pretended she still worked there. She'd wake up early, leave before I did, and drive off like normal. Most days she circled back home, sat around, or ordered DoorDash, sometimes 2 meals or more in a day. Since I came home midday to drop off my son, she'd actually leave the house again so we wouldn't cross paths. Because she quit the job, she let our health insurance lapse but said nothing. Instead, she siphoned money from my account to cover it and maxed out a credit card. I only caught on when I casually asked her for $200 and when she was getting paid. She dragged it out for days before finally admitting the truth. HR even confirmed to me she hadn't worked there in months. I suggested she get help and that our son should stay with my family until she was more stable. The very next day, she filed for divorce and hit me with a bogus PFA, protection from abuse order. She dropped it in a week, even telling my father we could stay together if I wanted, but by then I knew it was over and went through with the divorce. Next story. Friend of mine was in a 3-year relationship, starting to have talks about engagement, moving in, etc. Found out that Effer had a 1.5-year-old kid with another woman. Tried to lie about it when confronted. His family didn't know, apparently. He was also not paying support, but still having sex with the baby mama. Next story. In the mid-2000s and 2010s, I worked for a major bank. I was shocked at how many men had second families, that we usually discovered when one of the poor, unsuspecting wives would call us after coming across banking paperwork that didn't match any of their family's accounts, but was in her husband's name. She would be confused, call the bank wanting to know what was going on. I'd be able to see exactly what was going on, straight away, but wouldn't be able to say anything to the wife because her name wasn't on the account, etc. So I just have to assure her it was a legitimate account and gently advise her that she might like to discuss this account with her husband. Oof. Next story. I recently found out that my friend was an actor on the side for years now. Nobody in our friend group knew, not even the people who knew him since they were toddlers. We found out through one of us browsing around one night and finding a random viral clip of him in one of those crappy YouTube and Instagram memes. It was from a series called Tomorrow's Teachings, which is a series that's kind of problematic. So he's a little ashamed of it in hindsight, which is why he didn't tell us he was doing this. He's still best known for that clip. Apparently, it's permeated through his entire social circle at this point. The actual story of him becoming an actor isn't crazy or anything. Turns out that the crappy meme was his first role that he did because a friend asked him to fill in. He found out he liked acting through that, went to acting school, and now he's on a few shorts. Our friend group still lost our crap for a week straight over this fact, though.